Well, here it is. As you can see, we are back at home in the Morton building, and it's time to regroup and get ready for next year and get ready for fall. But wanted to take a few minutes and kind of talk about our final event of the year, up at the St. Lawrence River, our final BPT event of the season. What an interesting one. It was kind of bittersweet for me. Ended up getting out of there with a check. I mean, I squeaked in and got the last place check in our group. I think I finished 20th. So, that right there, if you ever watch MLF, that sitting on that cut line and being in and out on Score Tracker and knowing where I'm at any given time, it's crazy. And that's what I love about Major League Fishing, the every fish counts, and knowing the score instead of just going to a weigh-in and hoping my bag weighs more than different competitors and seeing where the cards fall. This in real time from the first period all the way to the final time. I mean, it is about as stressful as it gets, and knowing, hey, I'm one scoreable in, one scoreable out, or whatever, and it's just trading jabs. But looking back at this event, the goal was to go there and make Red Crest, to have a great event and make Red Crest. Unfortunately, we came up a little bit short. I kind of felt like if I could make the knockout round, I could make Red Crest. And after seeing now how the cards fall, that's exactly what it was. I think if I would have finished top 10 in my group, made the knockout round, I would have made Red Crest. So we came up a little bit short there. But, it's one of those things, I can't blame it on this actual event. I mean, you look back over a season of, one lost fish here or one extra fish here at this event and one at this one would have been the difference. So, I can't dwell on it. All I can do is learn from it, remember it for next year and, just look at it moving forward. So going to the St. Lawrence River, the last time we were there in a June event, if you might remember. That's when the guys were using the floggers and catching a bunch of bedding fish and all that. I knew it'd be different, but at the same time, I knew we were going to be at a place where it was going to take a tremendous amount of weight to do well. And knowing that, I kind of did, the math, looking at past events of, how much weight it's taken, because it's so much different than a 5-fish deal. A 5-fish deal, you look at it and know, hey, we're going to the St. Lawrence River. I'm probably going to need 20 pounds a day to do well. In our deal, you don't know if you're going to need 20 pounds a period, 30 pounds a period, what it can be. It's just such a variation. So it really makes for a different game and makes for some added stress as well. So going to the event, I knew the way our system works. We've got, 8 o'clock lines in, 3 periods, lines out, all that. So I don't have to worry about necessarily a takeoff and getting back to weigh-in. But I knew with the way the rules were structured, we would have 45 minutes when we left the ramp takeoff area, that we could have 45 minutes to drive to a ramp, launch, and then we have 30 minutes of ride around. So essentially we had an hour and 15 minutes before lines in when we left the ramp. So looking at that in itself, I'm like, I know, if I were to drive to Clayton and launch, that I'd still be driving in the truck and it'd be already lines in. So I didn't know if that would be the right strategy. I knew over years past that there's plenty of fish, 2-pound plus scoreable fish, a lot closer than that. So I opted the first day of practice. I launched about what would have been about a 45-minute drive to launch and get down in that Youngstown area, I think it's called, or Jamestown area, an area that's traditionally well known. I think actually now looking after the fact, it's where Michael Neal won. Morristown. Morristown. The Morristown area, believe it or not, it's actually where I believe Michael Neal won the event at. Congrats to Michael Neal, by the way. I spent my first day of practice down there and I just could not get anything going. And, really when you've got 2.5 days of practice, knowing the amount of fish that are going to be caught, you've got to find an area that you've got to do well with. So, 3/4 of the way through that first day of practice, I mean, I'm just not catching anything. And I kind of done the math, before practice started, that I was going to need, I felt like, at least 15 pounds a period, or, the math in my head was one scoreable every 15 minutes type of deal. I mean, I had it broke down that much just to know how consistent I was going to have to be throughout the day to be at the end of the day to be competitive. My guess was it was going to take, I thought, roughly 100 pounds to make the knockout round. I think it took, what did it take, like 113 pounds. So I was a little light there. I think to make a check, I had decided it was going to take, what did we say, 40 pounds a day, 80 pounds. And it actually took a little bit more than that, actually. So the catches were a little bit better.
That's what you had.
It took 82 pounds in our group. I think actually Group B, it actually took a little bit more. But so yeah, it took 82 pounds because that's what I had. So like I said, 3/4 of the way through the first day of practice, I mean, I'm just not even getting anything to build off of. So from there, you kind of start just running past areas that you've got confidence in and areas that you've got something to build off of. So I end up running closer to takeoff up towards Ogdensburg, and I finally caught a few fish and, ran on up there and hit some areas up around Waddington and just wasn't catching fish. And that's what surprised me about the places. I remember that first year we were there, 2013, there was so many more fish in the river. I mean, it's still a phenomenal fishery. It still showed up phenomenally and produced a lot of fish, but while there was a tremendous amount of fish caught, there's a lot of dead areas in the river as well. And I spent a lot of time eliminating those areas. So fast forward to the first day of competition, I was Group A. So we didn't know going into that day what kind of weights it was going to take. We hadn't set the precedence yet. And so I had just focused on an area where I'd had a lot of bites. And, the final day of practice, it was cloudy and rainy, but I had kind of determined I was going to fish around the Ogdensburg area and had caught some fish around the bridge and all that. And what I felt like was if I could have 10 spots roughly that I could just rotate through, pull in, throw a drop shot, and hopefully have a good day. Well, fast forward to that first day of competition, the day actually played out like I'd hoped and, turned out pretty decent until that final period. Things just kind of fizzled out. And what really surprises me is the area that I chose to start on competition. It was an area, a wall that created an eddy by a power plant where I'd had 3 or 4 bites in practice. I felt like I could pull up there in the tournament and kind of start my tournament off that way. I pulled up there that first morning, and I should have just listened to live scope right at then and there. I wasn't seeing any fish. I should have just bailed out. Anyway, I started there, didn't catch any fish, run down to my bridge, and things started to click. I could run the pilings. It seemed like about every other piling I could catch a scoreable off of. Everything was as basic as could be. I kind of felt like being this type of deal, every fish counts. When you go smallmouth fishing, especially up on the St. Lawrence River, it's hard to beat a drop shot just because a drop shot is just such a consistent fish catcher. So I felt like if I could keep the drop shot in my hand, I'd have my best shot. Lo and behold, that's where it played out. The first 2 periods, I was up there in the standings. That final period, things just kind of fizzled out. I don't know if the sun got out and it got bright, and I think it was just a realization there just wasn't that many fish in that area. I think I'd caught the few fish around there, and it wasn't replenishing like I'd hoped. So that final period, I started running some other areas where I thought I could catch some fish, and they just didn't produce. So I think after that first day, I'd kind of fallen back, what was I, about 5 or 6 pounds back.
6 pounds out, like 2 or 3 places.
I think I was sitting in like 23rd, 24th place after the first day. So not where I wanted to be sitting, but I wasn't out of it by any means. So going into the next day, I knew I was going to have to dig myself out of a hole. So, after watching Group B, they caught them good. Watching Score Tracker. After watching Score Tracker,
We did not watch.
yes, we did not watch it because we couldn't. After watching Score Tracker and watching their weights, I knew what I was going to have to catch going into that second day. So I knew I was going to have to do better, catch more fish. And with that being said, I only had 2 options. One was go completely start from scratch and go pre-fishing and hope I stumbled onto something. But knowing the amounts of fish that were being caught, I was going to have to like land on them and just have a perfect day. And I think I've kind of learned that worked for me this year, but it worked for me in tournaments where the weights weren't as fast and as drastic. I kind of felt like I needed to go back to the areas where I'd done well the first day and hope some new fish had pulled in there and build off of that. And even in that area, there were some areas that I hadn't quite fished yet or hadn't really fished. And I had some thoughts in the back of my head. I had a little stretch where I'd caught some fish in the past on a jerkbait, but usually it wasn't big numbers. It was just like one quality fish. And believe it or not, I didn't even go to them in practice. So, you know, even in one of these events, I was basically committed to the drop shot, but I still had a jerk bait, I had a top water, I had a lipless crankbait, I had a vibrating jig, all that in the box. And, you know, we can talk to fellow competitors. So my buddy Wesley's like, man, you need to throw a bladed jig, all this. And everybody knows I love to do that. Well, I hadn't had any bites on it in practice. And if you guys remember, I've caught some fish in the last year at St. Clair on a lipless crankbait. So I had some stuff tied on that I thought I might be able to make a move with. And so fast forward to that second day, I get in there and I catch a few on a drop shot, but it's not happening like I was hoping. And I think I was getting myself right up to the line, but it just wasn't happening. And at that point, I'm like, this is where I've kind of got to gamble a little bit and see what happens. So I opted to go up to this point where I'd caught him before on a jerkbait and just see if I could make something happen. Got up there, threw a bladed jig some, couldn't get any fish to bite that. Picked up a jerkbait, made a few casts with that. Pulled out a lipless crankbait. And here's what I love about a lipless crankbait for smallmouth is it's a bait you can cover a tremendous amount of water with. I actually got mine here. I pulled this out, the old one knocker, half-ounce one knocker, but I've got it on a 10-to-1 gear ratio reel, something that I can burn and cover a lot of water with, and got it on 20-pound line as well. So it's one of these things when I hook them and hook up good, you know, these are, I can horse them to the boat, swing them in, cover a lot of water. So I pulled out the old lipless crankbait and just started covering water on this point. And lo and behold, I get a bite and catch like a 2.5 or 3 pounder. And now I'm like excited because I can catch them on something other than a drop shot. And this is something that kind of falls right into my wheelhouse. Hey, I can cover a lot of water here and catch some fish, and I might be able to find a wad of fish. And it wasn't a few casts later, I hook up again, and that's when you feel that momentum really go in your direction. As I'm fighting that fish, what is the one drawback about a lipless crankbait? Comes up, jumps, and throws the bait back at me. So I just, as quickly as that momentum got going, I felt like the wind went out of my sails when you watch a quality fish that would have put me right into position come off. But at the same time, I looked at it as a positive as, hey, you're getting multiple bites on something different, and this might be something that you can run with and still have a good comeback with. Wasn't a few minutes later, I put another good fish in the boat, and I think in a matter of like 30 minutes, I've had 6 bites, I've put 4 good scorables in the boat, and I've dug myself out of that hole and got myself up above the line. And from there, I had one other area that was very similar to it that I'd found in practice, something I'd fished in the past. I'm like, I wonder if I could run to this other area and do the same thing with the lipless. And the neat thing about the lipless is I can cover a ton of water fast. I mean, I can kick the Garmin trolling motor on high and cut through that current and just cover a lipless crankbait. And that's what I started doing. And I was getting bit. And it was just back and forth. I think it was a battle between me, Dustin Connell, and Bobby Lane of just right there on that line. And a couple times I'd get up there, then Dustin would catch one or something. And it was just an emotional roller coaster. But towards the end of the day, I was mixing it up between the lipless crankbait. I'd see one here or there on live scope. I pitched the drop shot at it. And I think my final fish actually was one where I was throwing the lipless crankbait. I saw one on live scope, picked up my drop shot, pitched it in there, and caught a scoreable, which was the actual difference. But what was crazy is as quickly as the fish were biting, we had a system come in. It was the remnants of, who was it, Debbie? Hurricane Debbie. And if you followed the next day, I mean, it was miserable for him. But Debbie was showing up. And if you've done much smallmouth fishing, they are very weary when it comes to weather. They love the sun and wind, but sometimes they act weird when it gets cloudy. And that's what I was scared of. I was catching on the lipless crankbait that rain showed up, and man, they just quit. And luckily I caught that one on a drop shot with like an hour to go, and it put me above Connell. But there for like an hour, I mean, I was sweating bullets. I got Dustin Connell, who all he has to do is catch one scoreable bass, and he moves above me. And that final period, I'm fishing as hard as I can on the key places where I thought I could go back and catch fish. I didn't catch a fish, but luckily I stayed above that line. Dustin, you've won enough this year, so thank you for giving me that 20 spot. So it was an emotional roller coaster of a way to wrap up the season, but wasn't my best of season by far. But if you've been following along, this season's a big cut year, and I've survived the cut. Finished well above the cut line. Like I said, just missed red crest, so we've survived to fish 2025. And if you follow along, knowing next year they're going to cut another 20. So we've got our off season now, so we're going to spend a lot of time in here getting back in shape, getting all the tackle organized. We know our schedule for next year, so we're going to be preparing for those events and preparing for 2025. So yeah. I don't know what else to say. Anything else that I forgot about?
That was St. Lawrence, and you wish you could have shown some fish catches from day 2.
Yeah, you know, my apologies. You know, we've done a very good job. The camera lady that's behind the camera there has done a very good job, but I will say we had a major malfunction on our final day of fishing.
No footage, sorry.
No footage. We had a failure with the cameras, so we didn't get any of that footage. So I would have loved to have shown you. I mean, when you've seen one drop shot fish caught, you've seen it all, but to actually see me up there taking this lipless crankbait on this lipless crankbait rod, throwing it a mile out there and just burning it, and watching those fish take the rod out of your hand, it would have been fun and exciting. So you'll just have to trust me on that. I don't know, maybe we'll get to come chase some of these cans of smallmouth and show you some of it. I know they won't be like New York smallmouth, but hey, it's what we got here. So thanks for tuning in. We're going to definitely be doing plenty more to keep you all entertained in the off season. So if you've been following along this long this year, thank you again, and keep watching.